6 places. Just 6 places that I thought were completely normal, until I discovered that each one of them had become a gateway to something much darker than I ever imagined. When it all started, I was just an ordinary family man. I worked hard, took care of my children, and thought I was in control of my life. But then, the atmosphere at home began to change. My children, who had always been happy and loving, started having terrible nightmares. My wife became distant, as if something invisible was draining the peace from our home. And I began to feel an oppression I couldn't explain. It was only when God revealed the truth to me about these 6 places I went regularly, without suspecting anything, that I understood what was really happening to my family. Do you see the subscribe button on your screen? Please hit it now. Because here on this channel, we talk about the real spiritual battles and acts of faith that happen around us, without fear of the truth, without hiding anything. And this story might open your eyes to things you need to know. My name is Michael, I'm 38 years old, and until a few months ago, I considered myself a successful man. I worked as a sales manager at a tech company, had a structured routine that made me proud. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. to work out, always arrived at the office on time, and dedicated my weekends to family. My wife Sarah and I had built a life that, in anyone's eyes, seemed perfect. 2 beautiful children, Jacob, 12 years old, and Sophia, 9, a comfortable house in a quiet neighborhood, and that feeling that we were on the right track. I had always been a practical man, focused on results. I wasn't the type who believed in superstitions or negative energy. For me, problems had logical solutions, and success came through hard work and discipline. But there was something I didn't know back then, something that would completely change my perspective on the spiritual world that surrounds us. You see, after long weeks of work, I had my decompression ritual. On Fridays, some colleagues and I would go to a bar near the office. It was our time to relax, talk about business, laugh a little, and yes, drink more than I should have. What started as just one beer quickly turned into several. I'd come home later with alcohol on my breath, but I justified it saying it was part of professional networking. And it was exactly these moments, these places I frequented thinking they were just part of normal social life, that became the cracks through which a silent darkness began to enter my life. At first, there were just small signs, things I ignored, thinking they were coincidences or work stress. But when these signs started affecting Jacob and Sophia, that's when I knew something was terribly wrong. The first place God showed me was the most obvious, but also the one I most resisted accepting. Those bars where I spent my Fridays. Mike's Tavern was our meeting point. A place with dim lights, loud music, and that characteristic smell of spilled beer mixed with cigarettes that stuck to your clothes. It seemed harmless, just grown men relaxing after a week of work. But you need to understand something. It wasn't just about the alcohol. It was about the atmosphere I was absorbing without realizing it. Every Friday, I sat at that corner table with Dave, Marcus, and Tony. The conversations always followed the same pattern. Complaints about bosses, inappropriate jokes about secretaries, and those loud laughs that came more from the drinks than from anything genuinely funny. The more I drank, the more my language changed. Curse words I would never use at home came out of my mouth as if they were natural. And it wasn't just that. There was something about the conversations that always veered into dark territories. Dave always told stories about his extramarital adventures. Tony made derogatory comments about his wife that made me uncomfortable, but I laughed anyway. It was as if, in that environment, a part of me that I kept hidden came to life. I'd start with one beer at 6:30. Just one to relax, I'd tell myself. But by 10:30, when I finally left, I had already lost count. The drive home became foggy, and I'd arrive stumbling, with that strong breath that Sarah tried to ignore. But it was on a Friday in October that something changed. I was especially stressed. We had lost an important client at work, and I drank more than usual. I remember that while I was laughing at a particularly cruel joke Tony had told about a colleague of ours, I felt something strange. It was as if a cold shadow had passed over me. For a moment, the noise of the bar seemed distant, and I had the distinct feeling that someone was watching me. I turned around, but there was no one there. "You okay, Michael?" Dave asked, noticing my expression. Yeah, just a chill," I replied, trying to play it off. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just a chill. That night, when I got home, Sarah was waiting in the living room. She didn't say anything, just looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. It wasn't anger. It was as if she was seeing something in me that scared her. "Daddy," Jacob appeared at the top of the stairs, in his pajamas. "Why do you look different?" "Different?" I looked at myself in the hall mirror. My eyes were red, obviously, from the alcohol. But there was something more. It was as if a hardness had settled on my face, an expression I didn't recognize as my own. In the following days, I began to notice subtle changes at home. Jacob, who always ran to hug me when I came home from work, started keeping his distance. Sophia stopped asking me to read bedtime stories. And Sarah started praying more. I'd find her on her knees beside the bed, whispering prayers I couldn't hear completely, but that seemed urgent. I didn't want to admit it, but I knew something was wrong. And deep in my heart, a small, insistent voice whispered that it had all started on those Fridays at Mike's Tavern. But I still wasn't ready to listen to that voice. Not yet. The following Fridays, I kept going back to the bar. It was precisely because of what was happening at home that I ended up finding the second place. Sarah had mentioned, during one of our tense breakfast conversations, that she felt a heavy energy in the house. I rolled my eyes at the time. My wife had always been more sensitive to these spiritual things than I was. But when Jacob started having nightmares every night, and Sophia started crying for no apparent reason, I knew I had to do something. The problem was that I didn't want to admit that the problem might be related to my habits. So, like any proud man, I looked for alternative solutions. It was on a Thursday during lunch break that I passed by Mystic Corner, a small shop I had noticed a few times on the way to work, but had never entered. That day, something pulled me inside. The smell was the first thing that hit me, a sweet, nauseating mixture of sandalwood incense with something I couldn't identify. The walls were lined with shelves full of colorful crystals, scented candles, books with mystical covers, and small statues of figures I didn't recognize. "Can I help you?" A woman about 50 years old, with graying hair pulled back in a bun and several necklaces hanging around her neck, emerged from the back of the store. Well, I hesitated. It was embarrassing to admit I was there. "My wife said our house has bad energy, kids' nightmares, that whole thing." She smiled in a way that made me uncomfortable. It was a smile that seemed to know more about me than I would have liked. She led me to a specific shelf. "These black quartz crystals are excellent for absorbing negative energies. And this myrrh incense will cleanse the environments." Her hands moved gracefully among the objects as she spoke. "I also recommend this protection amulet. It's very old, very powerful." The amulet was a small dark metal pendant with engraved symbols I had never seen. When she placed it in my hand, I felt a strange sensation. It was as if it were warm, but not exactly in a comfortable way. It was expensive, but I was desperate. I paid and left the store with a bag full of items that promised to solve my problems without me having to change anything about my behavior. That night, I tried to explain to Sarah what I had bought. "Michael, where did you get these things?" She picked up the amulet reluctantly, and immediately dropped it as if it had burned her hand. "It's to help with the house's energy, like you were talking about." "Honey, these things aren't from God." Her voice was concerned. "We can't fight spiritual darkness with more darkness." But I didn't want to listen. I placed the crystals around the house, lit the incense in the master bedroom, and wore the amulet as a necklace, hidden under my shirt. At first, it seemed to work. The atmosphere in the house seemed lighter for a few days. I felt more confident, more in control. But that's when stranger things started happening. Jacob began drawing shadowy figures in his school notebooks, figures that looked strangely similar to the symbols on my amulet. Sophia started talking to invisible friends, who, according to her, appeared mainly at night. And I started having vivid dreams. Dreams where I was in dark places, surrounded by voices whispering things I couldn't understand, but that made me wake up with my heart racing and a feeling of dread that lasted for hours. The worst part was that, even with all these signs, I kept going to Mike's Tavern every Friday. And now, I had added regular visits to Mystic Corner to my routine. The woman, who I discovered was named Elena, always had something new to sell me, some new protection I supposedly needed. It was as if I had opened a door I could no longer close. And without realizing it, I was about to open the third one. What happened next was almost natural, as if one thing led to another without me realizing it. The Friday bar sessions had become more intense. Dave always talked about the movies he watched, mainly horror and thriller films that, according to him, were pure adrenaline. and with my mind already altered by alcohol and influenced by that heavy atmosphere that had settled in my life, I began to take interest in this type of content. "Dude, you have to watch that new horror movie that just came out," Dave said on one of those Fridays, as we finished our 4th round. "It's based on true events, Michael. Demons, possessions, all that stuff." "I don't know, man. I'm not really into those things." "Oh, come on. It's just entertainment. Besides, you seem to be going through some strange stuff at home anyway, right? At least you'll understand better what it's all about." It was twisted logic, but it made sense to my intoxicated mind. That night, when I got home and Sarah was already sleeping, I turned on the living room TV and put on the movie. What impressed me wasn't the fear, it was how some elements of the movie seemed familiar to me. The shadows moving in the corners, the feeling of oppression, the change in children's behavior. It was as if I was watching a dramatized version of my own life. When the movie ended, it was almost 2 a.m. I went upstairs to the bedroom with a strange feeling, a mixture of fascination and uneasiness I couldn't explain. But that's when things started escalating quickly. And then, on a particularly difficult night, Sarah and I had argued about my behavior, and she had slept in the guest room. I was channel surfing when I found something different. It was an adult channel. I had never been the type of man who sought out this kind of content. But that night, with my mind already conditioned by months of increasingly dark entertainment, I stopped to watch. What started as curiosity quickly turned into something much more dangerous. Night after night, when the family slept, I would go down to the living room and consume this content. Horror movies mixed with pornography created a toxic cocktail that was poisoning my soul in ways I couldn't even imagine. The consequences didn't take long to appear. During the day, images from these movies and videos would invade my mind without warning. I was in an important meeting at work when suddenly the image of a disturbing scene from one of those movies appeared in my head so clearly that I completely lost focus. My relationship with Sarah began to deteriorate rapidly. It wasn't just because I was coming home late from Friday bar sessions, or because she had found some of the spiritual trinkets I had brought from Elena's store. It was something deeper. I stopped looking at her with the same affection as before. My mind was being shaped by images that distorted my perception of intimacy, relationships, and what was sacred between a husband and wife. And the children began to be afraid of me. On a Saturday morning, while I was making coffee, Jacob came downstairs for breakfast. When he saw me, he stopped in the middle of the stairs. "Daddy, why do you have sad eyes now?" The question hit me like an arrow straight to the heart. "What do you mean, champ? Your eyes look dark. Like the monsters in the movies you watch." How did he know about the movies? I always watched after everyone was asleep, with the volume low. "Jacob, I don't watch monster movies." "Yes, you do, Daddy. I hear the scary noises when I go to the bathroom at night." That afternoon, while the children played in the backyard, Sarah sat with me in the living room. "Honey, I know you're watching things you shouldn't be watching." My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" "The TV history. I saw it, Michael. The horror movies, the other channels." Her tears began to fall. "What's happening to you? You're not the man I married anymore." I wanted to deny it, wanted to find an excuse, but looking into the eyes of the woman I loved, I saw something that broke me. Fear. My own wife was afraid of me. That night, I tried to stay away from the TV. But at 11:30, when the whole house was silent, I found myself going downstairs again, as if something was pulling me. It was as if I no longer had control over my own choices. And the scariest part was that I was beginning to like this feeling of being out of control. I didn't know yet, but I was about to find the fourth place that would open an even bigger door to the darkness that was consuming my life. And so Sarah suggested we seek spiritual help. "Michael, I can't stand watching our family fall apart like this," she said on a Sunday morning, while Jacob and Sophia were playing. "We need help. Real help." I knew she was right. After months of seeing our home's deterioration, the children's strange behavior, and feeling this growing darkness inside me, I was willing to try anything. "There's a new church that opened near the mall," Sarah continued. "They say the pastor there has a powerful ministry of spiritual deliverance. Several people have been talking about miracles that happen there." The following Sunday, instead of spending the morning in bed recovering from Friday's hangover, I got dressed and we all went to the New Life Spiritual Center. The building was impressive, modern, with mirrored glass and a packed parking lot. When we entered, I was immediately impacted by the energy of the place. The music was loud, vibrant, and there were hundreds of people with their arms raised, singing with an intensity one had never seen. Pastor Jerome was a charismatic man, about 45 years old, with a contagious smile and a stage presence that completely dominated the auditorium. "Friends, today we're going to talk about spiritual power," his voice echoed through the speakers. "You don't have to live like spiritual beggars. God wants you to have abundance. He wants you to have authority over the demons that torment your lives." His words seemed to be directed straight at me. This was exactly what I needed to hear. After the service, Sarah and I approached the pastor for a conversation. "Pastor Jerome, we're going through some spiritual situations at home," Sarah explained hesitantly. He looked at me with those penetrating eyes. "Brother Michael, I can see very strong spiritual oppression over you. But don't worry, we have very effective methods to deal with this." He led us to a room in the back of the church, where there were other members of the deliverance team. "First," he said, "you need to make a sacrificial offering. The enemy only releases his claws when he sees that you're willing to invest in your deliverance. I recommend it be at least $500. $500 was a lot of money for us at that time, but I was desperate. After I made the transfer right there on my phone, the pastor placed his hands on my head and began praying in a language I didn't understand. The other team members joined in, forming a circle around me. Come out of this life," the pastor shouted. "Spirit of alcoholism, come out. Spirit of lust, come out. Spirit of rebellion, come out." It was intense. I felt something moving inside me, a strange sensation, as if something was really being removed. When they finished, I felt different, lighter. "Now, Brother Michael," the pastor said, wiping sweat from his forehead, "you need to come here every week to maintain this deliverance. And whenever you feel the oppression returning, call me immediately." For a few weeks, it seemed to be working. I could better control my desire to drink, and the atmosphere at home improved slightly. But then, Pastor Jerome began introducing practices that made me uncomfortable. "To keep the demons away," he explained in one of these sessions, "you need to use these special anointed oils." He showed small bottles with a dark liquid. They're $50 each, but they're prepared with specific prayers and sacred ingredients. Week after week, there was something new to buy: consecrated salt to spread around the house, holy waters from sacred places, protection stones that were different from the crystals I had bought at the esoteric store, but seemed to have the same function. And the prayers. The prayers began to include invocations of names I didn't recognize, practices that seemed closer to what Elena did at the esoteric store than anything I remembered from the Bible. But the more I attended that church, the more spiritually confused I became. It was as if instead of finding clarity, I was diving into a strange mixture of Christianity with practices that my heart knew didn't come from God. Sarah also began expressing discomfort. "Honey, I don't know. This place doesn't bring me peace. I leave there more agitated than when I enter." But I was too invested, financially and emotionally, to stop. I had already spent more than $2,000 on deliverance offerings and spiritual products. It was on a Tuesday night, after a particularly intense session at the church, that I left there feeling emptier and more confused than ever. I drove aimlessly for about 20 minutes, trying to process what was happening to me. And that's when I saw the bright, colorful lights. It was a casino. Big, flashy, with a sign that blinked, "Lucky Stars Casino, where dreams come true." I stopped in the parking lot and stared at that building. I felt like a complete failure. Our bills were in the red with so many extra expenses during all this time. As the man of the house, it was my responsibility to provide and protect my family financially. Instead, I was spending our money on solutions that didn't work and creating more problems. Part of my mind, the responsible part, told me to leave. But another part, louder, whispered, "What if you could win enough to solve the financial problems? What if this was the way to fix everything at once?" I had $60 in my pocket, money left over from lunch that week. "I'll just try for an hour," I thought. "If I can turn this into a few thousand, I can get our bills current and Sarah will never have to worry again." I turned off the car and walked toward those bright lights, not knowing I was about to open the 5th and 6th doors that would take me to the lowest point of my life. When I entered Lucky Stars Casino, I was immediately bombarded by a sensory avalanche. Colorful lights flashed in hypnotic patterns, the sound of slot machines created a constant electronic symphony, and the air was charged with an artificial smell of cleaning products mixed with cigarettes and something I couldn't identify. First time here. A blonde receptionist, with a perfectly rehearsed smile, greeted me. We have a special promotion for new customers, $20 free to play. $20 free? That meant I could try my luck with $80 instead of just $60. Maybe it was a sign. In the first 30 minutes, I managed to turn my $80 into $180. My heart raced. This really works, I thought. Maybe I can solve our problems today. But then, as always happens in these places, the tide turned. In 20 minutes, I lost it all back. Not just the $100 I had won, but also my original $80. Just $40 more, I convinced myself. I know how these machines work now. 3 hours later, when I finally left the casino, I had lost $340, money we needed for the electric bill. Over the following weeks, I developed a terrible routine. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I would stop by the casino, just for an hour. On Saturdays, while Sarah shopped with the children, I would make up excuses to go out and try to recover what I had lost. It was during one of those Saturday afternoons, after having lost another $200 at a blackjack table, that I left the casino completely defeated. I was walking aimlessly through the streets when I saw a discreet sign, Lotus Wellness Center, yoga and meditation classes. The contrast couldn't have been greater. After the screaming lights and frantic agitation of the casino, that place emanated calm. It seemed exactly what I needed. I entered almost on impulse. Welcome to Lotus. A woman about 35 years old, wearing flowing white clothes, greeted me with a soft voice. I'm Harmony. You look stressed. Can I help you? Well, I've been going through a very difficult period, I admitted. I heard that yoga and meditation can help with anxiety. Absolutely. We have a meditation class starting in 15 minutes. It's perfect for beginners. The meditation room was an oasis of tranquility. Low lights, lavender incense, soft music playing in the background. We were about 12 people sitting on cushions arranged in a circle. Today we're going to do a guided meditation to connect with our inner energy, Harmony explained. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. Feel the universal energy flowing through you. In the first few minutes, I felt more relaxed than I had felt in months. But then, Harmony began guiding our meditation in a way that made me uncomfortable. Now, visualize a violet light surrounding you. This is the light of cosmic transformation. Allow it to connect you with the ascended masters who are here to guide you. Ascended masters? This didn't sound like the simple meditation I had imagined. Even with my eyes closed, something inside me screamed, stop. But the social pressure of the group, combined with my desperation for anything that would bring peace, made me continue repeating the words. When the session ended, I felt strange. Not exactly at peace, but as if I were floating, disconnected from reality. Over the following weeks, my life became a compulsive cycle between these places, a desperate search for relief that only deepened my inner emptiness. At home, everything was falling apart. Sarah barely spoke to me. Jacob started wetting the bed again, and Sophia obsessively drew shadowy figures, talking about beautiful voices that sang to her at night. It was on a Sunday morning that everything changed. In the bathroom, looking at my reflection in the mirror, I saw something that terrified me. My eyes were no longer mine. There was a hardness, an emptiness I had never seen before. And it was in this terrible quietness that a voice, not audible, but more real than any sound, echoed in my heart. Michael, look what you've become. It wasn't condemnation, but broken love. I instantly knew where it came from. It was God. The true God. Not the spiritual confusions I had encountered, but the God I had known as a child. And he was about to show me exactly how I had gotten to that point. In that moment, still standing in front of the mirror, I felt as if a film was being removed from my eyes. It was like watching a movie of my own life, but now being able to see what was really happening behind the scenes. God began to show me the truth about each of those 6 places. The bar wasn't just about alcohol, it was about the atmosphere of rebellion, corrupt language, and conversations that fed lust and bitterness in my heart. Every Friday, I wasn't just drinking, I was opening my soul to influences that pulled me away from my identity as a husband and father. The esoteric store. Elena wasn't selling me protection. She was selling me objects that served as invitations to spirits that didn't come from God. Each crystal, Each amulet, each incense was like a key handed over to entities that wanted access to my life and my family. The horror movies and pornographic content had done something terrible to my mind. They weren't just entertainment, they were portals that allowed dark images to install themselves in my thoughts, corrupting my perception of intimacy, family, and spirituality. Pastor Jerome's church. God showed me how places that use his name, but mix truth with lies, can be even more dangerous than obvious darkness. There, my legitimate spiritual hunger was manipulated and directed toward practices that confused me instead of freeing me. The casino had become an altar where I worshipped greed and desperation, sacrificing my family's well-being in hope of magical solutions that would never come. And the yoga center, under the mask of peace and wellness, it was teaching me to open my mind to masters and guides that weren't from God. Do you see now, Michael? The voice continued, gentle but firm. Each of these places was a door you opened. And through these doors, things that weren't mine entered your life, your home, your finances, your children's lives. Tears began to run down my face. It wasn't just sadness, it was a deep recognition of my responsibility as the spiritual protector of my family, a role I had completely abandoned. What do I do now? I asked out loud, knowing he would hear me. Close the doors, Michael. One by one. And this time, come directly to me. That same Sunday, instead of going out to another one of my usual destinations, I knelt in the living room and confessed everything to Sarah. Every place, every purchase, every lie, every choice I had made. She cried with me. Not tears of anger, but tears of relief. I knew you weren't yourself anymore, she whispered. But I didn't know how to bring you back. Together, we spent that afternoon removing everything I had brought from those places into our house. The crystals, the amulets, the oils, the books, everything went in the trash. I asked God for forgiveness for every wrong thing I did, every place I went that didn't please him, and committed to improving every day. We prayed over every room in the house, asking God to cleanse our family from the influence of those things. It wasn't easy. For weeks, I felt an almost magnetic attraction to return to those places. But every time the temptation came, I remembered what I had seen in the mirror, the empty man I had become, and the loving voice that called me back. That experience marked me in an incredible way and brought true change to my life. Today, 6 months later, our house has become a home again. Jacob doesn't wet the bed anymore. Sophia has gone back to drawing flowers and rainbows. Sarah smiles at me again with that love I thought I had lost forever. And I learned that there's no shortcut to true spiritual peace. It only comes through a genuine relationship with Jesus Christ, not through places, objects or practices that promise power, but actually steal our freedom. A few weeks after that experience in the bathroom, we found a small church where God's word was taught with simplicity and truth. No manipulation, no strange practices. Just Jesus, his word, and a community that helped us grow in faith. But the most important thing wasn't finding the right place, it was discovering that Jesus wanted a personal relationship with me. Not religiosity, not complicated rituals, not magic formulas. Just me, talking to him through prayer, reading his word, and allowing the Holy Spirit to transform me from the inside out. This transformation was real, pure, and happened in the silence of my heart. I didn't need to pay for it, I didn't need special objects, I didn't need anyone telling me what kind of offering to make to receive it. Jesus freely gave me what I had spent months looking for in all the wrong places: true peace, restored identity, and a healed family. If you're hearing this story and recognize some of these places in your own life, I want you to know, it's not too late. Jesus is waiting to show you too how to close these doors and find in him the peace you're looking for. But he needs you to be willing to hear his true voice, not the voices that whisper in the shadows of these places, promising quick solutions to deep problems. Leave a comment below and tell me, have you ever had a similar experience? Were there places in your life that seemed harmless, but you later discovered were affecting you spiritually? Or maybe you're going through this now and need prayer. Don't be ashamed, share your story. Sometimes, it's when we talk about these things in the light that we lose our fear of the darkness. Your testimony might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Leave your prayer request and I'll be praying for you. And speaking of how God works in unexpected ways, watch the next video, where you'll learn the story of a desperate mother asking for just one meal for her daughter in exchange for cleaning services. An incredible story about second chances and prayers that are answered. Thanks for listening. God bless you.